Today, the Department of Justice is opening an investigation into whether the Baltimore Police Department has engaged in a pattern or practice of violations of the Constitution or federal law.
And welcome back to the show. That was new Attorney General Loretta Lynch today announcing a Justice Department civil rights probe after the police custody death of Freddie Gray. Mr. Gray died from a severe spinal injury after his arrest last month. 6 police officers have been charged. 1 officer faces a count of second-degree murder.
This investigation will begin immediately and will focus on allegations that Baltimore Police Department officers use excessive force, including deadly force, conduct unlawful searches, seizures, and arrests, and engage in discriminatory policing.
Now, Baltimore police will be given the same federal review as the departments of Ferguson, Missouri, and Cleveland. The death of the 25-year-old Gray has sparked numerous peaceful protests in Baltimore. Then that turned into, obviously, a day of rioting that we saw last week. Dozens of businesses burned and looted, and more than 200 people arrested.
I would have to say that my first reaction was profound sadness. It truly was. It was profound sadness for the loss of life, for the erosion of trust, for the sadness and despair that the community was feeling, for the frustration that I know the police officers were feeling also as they tried to encourage peaceful protests, but then had to deal with violence.
An attorney for the family of Freddie Gray says it welcomes the Justice Department investigation.
We are gratified that national attention has been focused on the problems of the Baltimore City Police Department, because that gives us reason to believe that these problems can be solved. But first they have to be identified honestly and truthfully, fairly and impartially.
The Attorney General is launching the probe at the request of Baltimore's mayor. The Baltimore Fraternal Order of Police says it welcomes the DOJ investigation, but says it should also include the mayor's office. So, what do you think the investigation will turn out ultimately, Heather?
Well, clearly there's plenty to investigate, and I do have to say that Loretta Lynch has handled it really well as far as coming forward and really supporting the police, as opposed to Eric Holder, who didn't give that same type of support. It's going to be very interesting because there's civil rights violations alleged, and yet you've got a commissioner who's African American, you've got a mayor who's African American, 3 of the 6 police officers who were arrested as African American. But the bigger problem that I see in Baltimore is, do you know that in the past 24 hours there have been 9 shootings and 2 homicides? Nothing to do with the riots, nothing to do with this. It's purely another day in Baltimore. And so you've got police men and women who are dealing with this type of crime on a daily basis, where you're seeing 9 shootings, 2 homicides, and it's how to deal with that type of threat to your body, that type of threat to the community, that type of behavior that's going on, and how to deal with it in a way that isn't violating people's constitutional rights. And I think that it's going to take a lot of education.
And that's considered a light night, by the way, in Chicago,
right,
for instance, where there are plenty more shootings and plenty more deaths.
Yeah.
So it's a problem that rarely we hear about, or of that New York City police officer that was shot in the face.
Well, right.
Right. There are no protests over that in any capacity.
And what they deal with. And that's the thing. You know, you think about, well, they deal with the riots, that's just a one-off. This is every day. And they go into these communities that are very dangerous. And there's a level of adrenaline, I'm sure, and you can talk about that a little bit better. There's got to be a level of fear. There's a level of anger. And all of those things there's got to be a way to temper those so that there's a better relationship with the community, so that we don't have to waste these resources with the DOJ going all around the country doing all of these investigations.
Susan.
Oh, I would say to that point, Heather, is actually that it's a much broader issue than just in the Baltimore Police Department or Ferguson or Cleveland or wherever it might be. There is a real breakdown of trust. And that starts, according to some of the people I've talked to, right with the Obama administration, because there was a great deal of hope that things would change. But it has actually inflamed race relations in this country, and things have gotten worse and escalated, and that community has no trust, not just in the Baltimore Police Department, but in the administration as well.
Are you surprised that we see a world like we're seeing now under a black president 6 years in?
I think all of us are surprised because we haven't seen this since the 1960s. But if this action hadn't been taken by the Department of Justice, and if the complaint hadn't been filed against the police officers, this entire country would probably be on fire right now. That's how incendiary the situation is.
Jonathan?
Well, I mean, how long has this been going on? Obviously, there's been they keep saying that there's been these rumors or that there's been this abuse by police officers. If that was the case, why wasn't this, why didn't the DOJ come in a long time ago? So let's educate the public on what happens. The police department polices itself. They have their own internal investigations. And when the mayor believes that they are not policing themselves, then she could have called in the DOJ to come in and do an investigation on the police department. This isn't something that just happened with Freddie Gray, according to a lot of what a lot of people are saying. The other problem I'm having with this is that I can measure everybody at this table based on your experience, your education, and how you present yourself on a daily basis. Has nothing to do with the color of your skin. And I'm sick and tired of hearing newscasters and individuals on TV in Baltimore and all around the country saying, I'm a proud black man, I'm black, I'm black. Listen, you're a human being. You don't want to be defined by your color. Stop defining yourself by your color, and the whole community will make a change if you stop doing that.
That's very well said, but I want to hear how you'd measure me.
And like George Carlin said, by the size of your nostrils.
Okay, very good. I thought you were going to say 5'9.5", which would have been accurate. Heather, I know you wanted to add something there.
Well, I think that your point is well said. You know, when you have African American officers on the defense, that are defendants in this type of case, you see that it's about more than color. You see it's about crime. You see it's about the type of
and the lack of standards. That's why what you said. If you want to cure this stuff, tell a cop, you do this, you do that. If a guy says his legs can't move, you stop everything, you get an ambulance there. Well, if you don't do that, you get fired.
And that's one thing that Lynch said. She said, we want to give the police tools so that they can better deal with these situations. And so maybe this is a good way to start over and have our country be a little better.
I know your answer on this is a one-word answer. Are you for or against body cams?
I am for them.
Okay.
For.
Four. There you go. I think that'll solve it.
Everybody has them anyway.
Well, it's a very good point, right? Got one right here. Coming up next, David Cameron will stay on as British Prime Minister. But what about the American political veteran strategist advising him? Back with more in a moment.